Welcome to the dawn of a new, unified Republican government. Feels really good to say that, actually.
And we welcome you in to America Talks Live Hour 2, where the most important program content comes from you. Your comments, questions, and observations phoned into us at 1-877-639-7629. That's 1-877-Newsmax. We just saw House Speaker Paul Ryan, who, along with other current members of the House GOP leadership team, will probably all keep their jobs, ironically, following the election of Donald Trump. They may not have been all in before last Tuesday, but they sure sound like it now. We'll talk about that new way of thinking on Capitol Hill in just a minute. But before we get to all of that, Miranda Kahn joins us with a news update. Miranda?
Thanks, JD. Yeah, one of Donald Trump's national security advisors, Mike Rogers, resigns from the transition team. Politico reports that Rogers was purged because he was an ally of Chris Christie's. The New Jersey governor was removed as head of the Trump transition team last week and replaced with VP-elect Mike Pence. Mike Rogers says he's proud of the team Trump and VP-elect Mike Pence have assembled. Trump supporter and former GOP presidential candidate Dr. Ben Carson won't be serving in Trump's cabinet. Carson tells the Washington Post that he wants to have the freedom to work on multiple issues and not be pigeonholed into just one area. He was in the running for several cabinet positions, including Secretary of Education and Health and Human Services. And Politico reports Alabama Senator Jeff Sessions is the leading candidate for Secretary of Defense, but right now Sessions hasn't said whether or not he wants the job. For much more on these stories, please visit Newsmax.com. I'm Miranda Kahn. Back to you, JD.
Thanks, Miranda. There is a lot to talk about, and to do so, here on the anchor desk, I'm pleased to be joined by former Congressional Chief of Staff Glen Downs. Glen, in a job he held for 2 decades, was the Chief of Staff to my old colleague, Congressman Walter B. Jones of North Carolina, and on the far end of the anchor desk, but now as they take what we call in the business the two-shot, alongside Glen is former New York Police Special Investigator and political pundit, available for all sorts of rousing political speeches, our pal Michael Solomon. Michael is the author of The Conversion Prophecy. I read the book, and Glen, who grew up in Greensboro, North Carolina, if you read this book, not a spoiler alert, but there is an O. Henry-esque twist at the end of that book, as people read it. And not to give away everything at the end of Michael's book, but let's go to the beginning, actually the beginnings of the next Congress, as the House Republican Conference gets together today to basically rubber stamp their leadership. And so Speaker Ryan steps up as if he has a new lease on life. Here is what he told the assembled press corps, and we'll talk about it afterwards.
Our job is not to look backwards. Our job is to look forward, make President-elect Trump as successful as possible, help him with the transition so we can make good on our commitment to the American people to fix this country's big problems.
All right, so Glen, there he is. It's a new day. All that talk about he just wasn't there yet with Donald Trump. Oh, he's there now.
Yeah, no question about it, JD. Well, obviously, you're exactly right. When Mr. Trump won the presidency, that probably did what it drove a nail into the effort to try to derail a re-election of Paul Ryan as Speaker, because Mr. Trump wanted to get some things done, and also you had Reince Priebus as Chief of Staff as a close ally of Paul Ryan.
Michael Solomon, the old rule, I'll clean it up for a family show. It's better to have him inside the tent spitting out than outside the tent spitting in. And so we've seen with Reince Priebus coming on as Chief of Staff for Donald Trump, Steve Bannon kind of being Mr. Outside, you've got the right brain, left brain, the inside, outside, and I guess the question becomes, does Ryan really follow through, including on Mr. Trump's border initiatives that would include sending back, in the first wave at least, the really bad guys, as he said Sunday on 60 Minutes?
I absolutely. You know, it's funny because when I heard Ryan speaking today, he looked like a kid on Christmas morning coming down to the tree. You know, all of a sudden there were all these gifts, and wow, now what do I do with them? So the first thing you do is you assemble them, and I think that's what he's doing. Is he's trying to get all his ducks in a row, and he's trying to make sure that everything gets done the way it should be done. And he's become an ally of Trump because he's going to need him, and Trump is going to need Ryan. So it's going to be a two-way street. And as far as the border initiative is concerned, I mean, if you go back to 1996, when Clinton signed the Illegal Immigration Act, I mean, it's all right there. It's settled law. It's been signed. It's in law. Why don't we just enforce it?
Well, even before that, you go back, Glenn, years. And the major failing has been that presidents of both parties, following Ronald Reagan and passage of Simpson-Mazzoli, where there was a limited amnesty and then they're going to apply the law, nobody's bothered to enforce the law.
Correct. Correct. That's been the problem, as you, I think, coined the term some time back. Republicans want cheap labor, Democrats want cheap votes. And that's been that. So they've kind of colluded to not enforce the law. So ironically, as my colleague just pointed out, Donald Trump doesn't really need anything from Paul Ryan or anybody else to alter the immigration policy of the country in the direction he wants, because he's got all the existing law he needs. All he needs to do is enforce the existing laws.
1-877-Newsmax. That's 1-877-639-7629 to talk about what's on your mind. Now, on the outside looking in, and this has some overtones worthy of a work of fiction by Michael Solomon, because this happened in 2004 after the Bush re-election. George Soros and his crowd showed up in Scottsdale, in my district, to plan their comeback. And that is going on right now in Washington. Right. The Democracy Project, Soros, and all those big money leftists are there trying to plot how to come back. One way they want to do it is they want to start up a leftist version of Judicial Watch. Now, Michael, with your background in law enforcement, we don't mean, and there it is on our parent website, newsmax.com, the left is already pretty much vertically integrated. Lawyers love to kick up dust. Judicial Watch, I think, is pretty reputable because they played it down the line, and they continue to do so, even out in Arizona against a Republican Attorney General. But there's no doubt, if the left puts a bunch of dough behind some obfuscating lawyers, they can try to kick up the dust and use their allies in the not-so-independent judiciary.
You know, there's always been a saying that I had, if you put two lawyers in a room and you lock them up for an hour, they can rewrite the Constitution without even blinking an eye. It's amazing what they want to do. My theory on as far as getting all the immigration votes and everything else is, let both parties, you know, I hate to use the word bipartisan. I like the word nonpartisan. I think that's more of a direct term. But let both parties throw out the illegals. Let both parties get after immigration. Then they both don't have to worry about the vote.
But the problem is, Glenn, the Dems have hitched their wagon. It's no longer get out the vote, it's bring in the vote. They're not going to change that.
No, listen, there are credible reports that up to maybe 3 million illegal immigrants voted in this election we just had. We had the weekend before the election. The President of the United States is on video, on camera, telling illegal immigrants to vote, and nothing will happen to them. If Democrats cannot go along with deporting illegal immigrants, because they'll be actually deporting their voters.
Yeah. So and it's always, and this is the thing. People ask, gee, why can't you guys get along? Well, the problem is, save for a couple of noteworthy exceptions, usually triggered by a national trauma like 9/11. First, last, and always for the left, it's how to put in place and institutionalize political power that favors them. We wish it were otherwise, but that is always the case. Tell you what, we got a call right now at 1-877-Newsmax. That's 1-877-639-7629 to Las Vegas, where Chuck is on the line. Chuck, welcome to America Talks Live.
Hey, thanks, JD. I'd just like to say that the Republicans are just as surprised as the Democrats that Donald Trump won. This is a Trump victory, not a Republican victory. And the Trump people should tell the Republicans, get in line and let's go. We've got the Congress, we've got the presidency. Now's the time to really move forward on all the major issues, because Trump says, let's do it, let's do it.
And Trump becomes the head of the party as the next president of the United States. And Glen Downs, you were talking about this earlier. Despite Paul Ryan's reputation as a policy wonk and an innovator in terms of legislation, Mr. Trump may have the strong personality that permeates the House Republican conference no matter the status of the speaker.
Right. Well, you know, the House Republicans, just like maybe Republicans in a lot of places, have sort of a follow the leader instinct. And obviously, sometime back in the line, almost like a parliamentary form of government has been overlaid on top of a representative governmental structure. So people, are, instead of being independent representatives, frequently are looking to be told what to do by their leadership.
So they're more franchisees than independent small businessmen. They take the template and go with it.
That'd be a good analogy.
Yeah, let me go to one other thing. We may even talk about it more after the break, and that is this insistence, Michael Solomon, by big city mayors like Bill de Blasio and Rahm Emanuel that, oh, no, our cities are going to remain sanctuary cities for illegals. Your take on that?
Let both of those mayors walk some of the streets at night. Nobody knows who they are. You know, put some makeup on, put a mustache on or something, walk around and see how they like it. People are actually afraid in these cities. They're afraid in Chicago, they're afraid in New York, they're afraid in San Francisco. And that's what's happening. I mean, the sanctuary cities it's crazy. There are 31 cities in 21 states in this country that are sanctuary cities, and nobody cares. I mean, going back to the Immigration Act in 1996, that Clinton said it. He says they want to know that these people are there and they want to deport them, even for minor crimes, even for traffic violations and DUIs and such. They want them out, and nobody's done a thing. I mean, in L.A. it was Daryl Gates who back then who said no, we're not going to do it, and it carried on all the way up from 1998 till now.
Glenn, there are some things with the power of the purse, and this is a topic we really want to get into more and take some of your calls at 1-877-NEWSMAX. That's 1-877-639-7629. Now, you mentioned Congress kind of being compliant and complicit. There were a few of us who spoke up very loudly.
Correct,
but when push came to shove, whether it was under a Clinton or a Bush, or Mr. Obama, it was business as usual, refusing to enforce laws and letting these cities basically operate as sanctuary cities no matter what existing law is on the books. Tell you what, we're going to talk more about this subject and some other things in the news and take more of your calls. Again, the number to call in, 1-877-NEWSMAX. That's 1-877-639-7629. And if the transition weren't enough, President Obama on the road talking more American politics than international diplomacy. Gee, he just can't seem to break that bad habit. All that and more as we continue. It's America Talks Live, Hour 2, here on Newsmax TV.